Hey everyone, welcome to Digging In. We're looking forward today and have an opportunity to talk to two special women who are part of our Eagle Consulting team. And we're going to look at crossing the line, a specific chapter in this book today. We'll get to that in just a moment. And look at how does that play out in our life. But let's talk about our ladies that are here today and who they are. So we have Heather Lawson, who is a counselor on our Eagle counseling side in our Decatur and Coleman office. And we have Tricia Collins, who is a therapist as well in our Decatur office and also a leadership coach. So these ladies have so much to give and so much wisdom to offer us today. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right. So these ladies have expertise in looking at emotions and looking at leading yourself. So chapter 5 in Crossing the Line is entitled The Monster. You've got to read this book, you've got to get this book and process through it. And the monster is fear. Mm-hmm. Understanding how fear plays out in our life, because we all have fear, don't we?
Absolutely.
As adults, kids, we all have fear. We all deal with fear on some level. Yeah. And so in the book, it talks about self-doubt being a component of fear. That we really have to understand, do we trust ourselves and how do we trust ourselves? So let's talk about fear. Let's talk about self-doubt and what that looks like. So, self-doubt. How do you define that, Tricia?
How I saw it, especially when I was reading Dr. Little's book, was just thinking through when have I not fully trusted myself? When have there's something in front of me, obstacle unknown, and when have I not fully trusted myself to a degree in that situation? And that's what I was thinking. One of the first things that came to mind when I was thinking, at least in the context of Eagle and my time here, is you all hired me at a very young age, straight out of grad school. I hadn't even graduated yet, and you offered me a job, which I was super thankful for. But I was young, and I immediately was sitting down across from adults in some of the hardest seasons of their life, and I did not feel equipped at the time. I had the degree, I had the paper that said it, but really sitting down and walking it out, I remember that being a season of self-doubt, and just fear was a part of that for sure. So you had the degree, you had the skill, but the experience was lacking.
You were getting ready to actually begin that journey to gain experience, and so not having that experience created some fear for you. So how'd you deal with that? What did you end up doing?
Take a deep breath and walk into it, for lack of a better phrase. It was the job. It was what I was hired to do. So some of it was just waking up in the morning and deciding, okay, we're doing it and we're going to learn. I think that was a big piece too, is learning to be okay with having some of the doubt and not having to be the expert, and being okay with that as well. Especially in the younger roles, we want to prove ourselves. So it was learning to just be okay not knowing all the answers at the time, and then going to peers and being willing to say, this is what walked in the door and I don't know what to do here. And being willing to ask for some help was a big piece of some of that.
That is so rich, and lean into it. A lot of times we want to step away from fear, or we do things to stop ourselves from experiencing fear, whether we choose to go a different direction, or we choose to not acknowledge we feel fearful, but we try to avoid that. But you're saying lean into it, kind of lean into it and allow yourself to be maybe a learner in that situation. So leaning into fear, talk a little more about that. That's really good.
So I guess the word that comes to mind too is courage, because it's not the absence of fear, it's just doing it despite the fear. And so I think that was part of that journey. And then if I can fast forward us even to these last few years in my world, because again, as I was reading through that chapter and just reflecting on what that's looked like, to put words to it. That was one season of truly knowing I don't have the experience here and I'm young and what is this going to look like. But even making the transition, as you introduced me, I've been on the therapy side for 12 years and have been transitioning slowly to our other side of the house. And it's different. There's similarities, but it's different too. And then stepping back into a leadership role that y'all are allowing me to step into. And the doubt there is different. So it's a different. I was comfortable at this season of life as a counselor. I really felt, not that I knew every answer, but I was very comfortable and confident in that role. And so now I'm stepping into a different role where I'm not as comfortable and I'm not as confident every day on the exact movements. But I think that's part of the self-doubt is I've learned to trust me, and then I've learned to trust my values and foundational things. And so that looks different today. I'm still intimidated to a degree, but I'm not as fearful as the earlier years. Because my values, I'm much more cemented in that, and I know I have ground to stand on.
So you can become intimidated. Again, another emotion, right?
Absolutely.
What you feel. But you don't have to allow fear to really control how you respond. So Heather, let's talk about some other emotions attached to fear. What would you say are some emotions that kind of attach themselves to fear?
I think most commonly when people talk about fear, the word that we hear most often in the therapy room is anxiousness. I feel anxious, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I don't know, are all common phrases that we hear. But the most common thing I think would just be a sense of anxiousness and not really knowing, I guess.
And that anxiety can come about in different ways, right?
Oh, it can manifest physically, right? You know, stomach aches, headaches, right? I think about our young kids, right? And those that are maybe fearful of going to school or going in public places, especially with everything we've been dealing with the last few years. Lots of stomach aches, lots of headaches for our young people, but even adults, right? Ulcers and other physiological things, that fear can really manifest itself. Headaches, backaches, aches and pains.
So you have to be aware.
We do. We have to be very aware. Yeah.
So let's think about even our relationships and how, from your perspective and your experience, and your expertise, how does fear, self-doubt, trust, lack of trust in yourself, how does it play out in your work relationships, in one's work relationships? How does it play out in personal relationships?
Well, if I can speak, I think that a lot of times there's this disconnect that happens, right, when we're fearful. For some people, it may cause them to pull away from or to push back instead of the phrase that you like to use, that leaning into, or, you know, finding your courage and being able to put words to it, right? So I think there's this disconnect that can happen, and we really want to be able to find connection, but fear is very visceral and it's very powerful, and it has the ability to cause us to withdraw.
I think we don't put words to things sometimes when we're fearful. We build it up in our heads.
Absolutely.
And so then we can avoid or immediately put those defenses on, as she's saying. And so communication is at a standstill sometimes, or at least not in a healthy version within that. In any kind of relationship, definitely coworkers, but even our personal relationships.
You know, I've heard people talk about how under fear we can kind of sculpt our own script, kind of make up the stories of what we perceive from others, or what we might think that they may be feeling, or how they might be viewing us, and so that can not be accurate.
Right, yeah. The story that we tell ourselves is not always what is, right? We can't read other people's minds. We can't know what they're thinking or feeling. We just make these assumptions, and sometimes, like you were saying, they just magnify, right? And they're usually not as bad as what we think they are.
So what do we do as we think about fear? And you ladies have already given some great ideas of what to do with fear, but what are some more how-tos or what can I do or how do I even recognize this is going on and driving me versus me driving it. Give me some of your thoughts and wisdom from what do you do? What do you do about this?
One tangible, I would say, and we can go back and forth a little, is the phrase I encourage others with, but also tell myself with sometimes, is what is my next right step? Because I think fear can lock us up. And so we either get too overwhelmed and we can't even see the next right step, or we're so afraid of the step 6 paces down because we've overthought it of, well, if I do this, this could happen, and then this could happen, so we're way out here. So I like the short, simple phrase of what is my next right step? And then deciding I'm going to move on that.
Absolutely. I think even for me, just one of the things that I personally do, but I also recommend to our clients is before I get to that place is just breathe. Just breathe. Take a step back, right? Internally, even physically. I'll even lean back if I'm sitting and just take a step back and go, okay, hang on. Take a nice big deep breath, kind of clear the mind just a little bit so that you create that space to be able to think a little bit more clearly, right? What's happening? What am I experiencing right now? What's driving this? That's one of my questions is what's driving this? Is it the emotion? Is it my values? Or is it something else? And really being able to assess what's going on in this moment. Nothing has to happen right now. I have time to breathe and I have time to think.
One of the things we encourage everyone we walk with is thoughts are first. Thoughts drive emotions, and then emotions drive our behaviors.
Say that again.
Thoughts drive emotions. Emotions drive our behaviors. The emotion is fear, and there's a thought driving that. So that's what Heather was explaining of slow down enough and give yourself space to, yep, that is your feeling. Don't deny. Don't know I'm fine. Don't deny. Just that's what you're feeling. But let's slow down and create enough space where you can figure out what is the thought I have attached here that's driving this.
Don't you want to be around these ladies? Don't you want to have a chance to sit down with them and have a cup of coffee? I'm just amazed by your insight and your wisdom of understanding fear and figuring out what you do with it. So here are some thoughts and some questions for you. I want you to think about, do you need to breathe? Do you need to slow down and really analyze what does your fear look like? Not do you have it, but what does it look like? And then what is your next step? As these ladies both have said, what's that next step? Not 3 down the road, but what's the next step? And see if that can help you look, assess, figure out how to face the monster of fear. This has been a healthy, strong conversation. Thank you for your insight and your wisdom. And we are looking forward to continuing our conversations on crossing the line and giving you an opportunity to make a decision to do that. Thanks for listening to us today.
To learn more about the concepts from this video, you can find Dr. Larry Little's book, Crossing the Line, available to purchase on Amazon and our website, eaglecenterforleadership.com. You can also find the podcast, Crossing the Line with Larry Little, available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or online at eaglecenterforleadership.com. Thank you for watching.